Welcome. Bringing yourself up to a standing position, if that's okay. In the middle of your mat in Tadasana, some people call it Tadasana Samastitihi. Of course, Sama means with, Stitihi means stability from the root star. So Tadasana, mountain pose with stability. And this is one of the qualities mentioned in the Yoga Sutra, stability. So we've got the feet together or close. We've got the toes spread. The legs may be together, depends on the shape of your legs. And the feet may be together, depends if your thighs meet before your feet or not. But if the feet are not together, they're level. The arms are by your side. Your head is up. Shoulders are down. Breath is deep. And perhaps we can feel a relationship between the contact we have with the floor and the lift we have through the crown of the head. So the contact you have with the floor and the lift you have through the crown of the head. And if you get those two things going on, the upward energy, the prana energy, then you'll get the apana, the downward energy of the sloughing off of the body. So the soft tissue will slough off or drop down like a snake skin, like the way snakes sort of sloughs its skin off. Similarly, as we press, we lift up through the crown and the soft tissue, like the trapezius, releases down. The neck releases, the breath's deep. So this is Tadasana or Tadasana Samastitihi, a pose we find in some older texts. Raise your arms up when you're ready. So raise your arms up when you're ready. And lightly tone your tummy as well. Lightly tone the tummy. So this is hands up in or Urdhva Hasta. Urdhva Hasta means hands up in Tadasana. So now, of course, it's yoga. So the way we do it is just as important as the things we do. In fact, more important. So as you raise up, what we want to try to evoke is a feeling of yoga. In other words, union between the various fibers. So as you move around, see if you can feel you're lifting your lower back, you're lifting the sides of the body, you're lifting the belly, the deep belly, but at the same time, we're making sure the neck is not tense. Some yoga teachers tell us to raise our arms and drop the shoulder blades. I'm not going to say that to you. I'm going to say instead, raise your arms, but don't tense the neck. So that's psychophysical, naturally. Take a big wide circle to release and bring your hands to your hips. Step your feet into a generous stride, a wide stride. Breathe if you can through your nose with your hands on your hips. Jaw soft, eyes soft in this generous stride. We're going to turn the left toes in and the right foot and leg. Now, if you turn on the ball of the foot first, and then you finish the last little bit on the heel, you should end up with the correct alignment, which is heel to arch alignment. We're going to come into the relatively well-known, but still quite modern, Utthita Trikonasana. Inhaling, exhaling, concentrating on building and maintaining strength through the standing leg. So through the front leg, sorry, both legs are standing legs, aren't they? Through the front leg. Now, how do you create strength? What is strength? Strength is togetherness. Strength is togetherness, so samyukta, to bring things together. So bringing together the various fibers of the muscles that constitute your front thigh, so those are the quadricep muscles, is codependent on the weight you have on your foot. So if you move your front foot in different ways, you feel the weight coming to the inner foot, the outer foot, the front of the foot, the back of the foot. You'll feel for yourself the different points of pressure create different points of extension or lift or tone in the front thigh. And you can use that experimental movement to build up strength, which, as I mentioned, is the coming together of many fibers. Inhale, come on up. Well done. Hands on your hips. Breathe through your nose. Back toes in, front foot and leg out. Remember, if you turn on the ball of the foot first, try that, and then finish off the turn on the heel, you should end up with the correct alignment, which is heel to arch. And I'm happy to, talk about why that is. at any point. Right, we're going to raise the arms up. So it's heel to arch. It's never heel to heel in these kind of poses, simply because of the way it makes the back tight, and therefore the diaphragm. Inhale, raise your lead arm. That's the one near your front leg. That's it, you got it. Inhale, exhale, strength. Let's remind ourselves what strength means. The coming together of many different fibers. Strength means that in every context of life, doesn't it? More people together are stronger. More connection within the body. It makes parts of the body stronger. More bricks in a house make the house stronger. On and on. So really concentrating on the gathering together of the various fibers over time of the front thigh. Don't hold the breath. Breathe through your nose if you can. Moving forwards and backwards in ways that really do accomplish this samyukta, this gathering, or we can just call it yoga, can't we? So see if you can find more and more fibers, as I suggested before, perhaps by changing the weight ratios investigatively on your foot, front foot. Inhale. Good job, everyone. Come on up. It's a lovely pose, Trikonasana. Hands on your hips, feet face forwards. Breathe through your nose if you can. Now, you might want to put a block in front of you because we're going to forward fold and we want to keep this whole part of the body open. So pelvis, tummy, chest. What we don't want to do is fold over the abdomen. So if you think you might want blocks, bring your feet together, get blocks. If you haven't got blocks at home, books will do fine. So it's Prasarita Padottanasana, but a Parivrita version of that. Let's turn the toes in a little towards each other. Be patient with your body, with yourself, because patience is one of the perfections that we practice in yoga. They're called paramitas, and in Sanskrit, patience is called kshanti. When you're ready, inhale, lift up from your groins. Exhale, come forwards, left hand on the floor or block, fingertips all flat, and turn. The other hand can go onto your sacrum, which is the bony plate just above your tailbone and just below your waist. What I would suggest is that we don't hold our breath. We start letting it go. The pose wants us to start taking deeper breaths to be more expressive, so we will. Take deeper breaths, be more expressive. Keep the jaw soft. There's so much we could say about this pose, but let's start with the feet. Balancing between the inner and outer feet is like surfing. It's a constant endeavor in awakeness to anicca, in Sanskrit, meaning change. Let's turn and bring the other hand down and the other hand on the sacrum, similarly. So it's the Parivrita, Prasarita Padottanasana, Prasarita meaning spread out, Pada meaning foot, Ot meaning intense, Tan meaning stretch. Breathe through your nose. Be calm, shamatha in Pali and Sanskrit, shamatha. Actually, it's just in Sanskrit, samatha in Pali. Calmness. It's the foundation, isn't it, for practice? We know that from the Yoga Sutras too. Yoga Sutras tell us to be shaitilya, relaxed. And they say that in reference to poses, shaitilya. Bring both fingers onto your blocks or floor, both hands onto your blocks or floor. Breathe easy. Just walk your feet a little closer to each other. Come as high as you can on your fingertips on the block or floor. And when you feel ready, lead with the bottom of the breastbone and come up. Excellent. Walk your feet calmly towards each other. Have a little shake out if you wish. It can feel quite nice to have a little shake out. A very, very traditional pose in terms of yoga history anyway, or South Asian history, is Vrikshasana. So bring your feet together. Stand with your arms by your sides. Breathe through your nose. Notice and allow your body to do things like twisting without controlling it for a minute. Just so sometimes the body, if you let it go, will want to twist to one side or twist to the other. I think it's quite nice and interesting and important to let it at first. So you let the body just range around in what we call its samskaras, its habitual tendencies. And in that way, the nerves can start waking up to where we're unconsciously being pulled. And that's how it makes it conscious. And so the body starts coming around to the center without you or me or us doing it. So that's yoga should be ideally selfless. For lots of reasons we can talk at length about. Let's raise up the right heel and really feel into your left foot. So I do that myself by moving forwards and backwards on the left foot and feeling the two of the main foot arches, the one on the inside and the one on the outside. Big toe side, little toe side foot arches. And when you feel awake in your foot arches, then we're going to raise up the leg and place it wherever. It can be on the ankle, it can be cup of the knee, it can be right at the top of the thigh, and the hands are going to come into the namaskara. And I love tree pose because it doesn't take any prisoners. So if your mind is caught up in anything other than the now, that's perfectly normal, and you should feel a great sense of love towards yourself. Then, if that gets exposed, you can have your hands in prayer or raised up as you like. Or you could even homage the first time we hear about this pose, which is where we hear about it in the context of the Greeks, ancient Greeks, seeing what they called danda swamis, raising a stick above their heads. Okay. I never get bored of this pose. Great. Okay. If you're ready to release, of course, it's traditional to stay a very long time, but we won't. Bring your feet down, shake it off, breathe, breathe, breathe. Re-establish your feet on the floor. That means letting go of the habit patterns in the body that are doing something other than what's happening now. So feel what's happening now, feel the floor. When you're ready, raise up your other foot. And similarly, Vrikshasana, the tree pose. So Vriksha means tree in Sanskrit. Again, the hands can be a prayer or above your head as you like. Don't hold the breath. Do let the chest be a little buoyant. A sort of a physical attitude, if you like. Physical attitude of buoyancy. Wonderful for keeping strength in the foot arches, the two I mentioned, plus the one that goes across the foot. Each foot has 3 arches, medial, lateral, transverse. Breathing through your nose if you can. We can talk about lifting the inner groin of the standing leg, the top of the inner thigh, lifting up. We can talk about deepening the gluteal crease of the standing leg where the buttock and thigh meet. Okay, good job, everyone. Very calmly release and place and breathe. And you can just kick out a little bit. We're going to step the feet generously with the hands on the hips. Breathing through our nose if we can. We're going to come into the beautiful Virabhadra or Virabhadrasana, the warrior pose, number 1, or Ekam. So we're going to raise our hands up from our hip joints rather than the hips, whereas I put my hands on my hips, it's quite high. If I go to my hip joints, it's a little lower. That's the challenge. Just see if you can imagine at least that your arms are raising up from the hip joints. The tummy will end up sort of toned, keeping the lower back long thereby. The breath is expressive. And I'm sure some of you will feel a little support coming from the pelvic floor, a little nudge, pushing our awareness into the central channel and maintaining our awareness or our energy in that channel with that little buoyant muladhara, that root support. We're going to turn back toes in. It's up to you which way you turn, to be honest. Back toes in, front foot and leg out. Whole body is turning in one direction. We're going to turn in the other direction afterwards, obviously. We're going to take the front foot further across the width of the mat. So you might go up to hip width, but not beyond. You're going to raise the back heel, turn it out, bring it down again. Keep that tummy reiteratively toned, meaning it draws in and up, and then it does it again, and then it does it again. So it's not forceful, It's gradual and it's increasing. Inhale when you're ready, raise to your fingertips. Exhale, bend your front knee. Play with the stretch from the inner groin. Don't hold the breath. And movements backwards and forwards can be one way in which you can play with the stretch of the inner groin of the back leg. That's a big stretch of the psoas muscle and the iliacus muscle as they come across the outside edge or the lateral pubic bone or pubis. So I find lifting my back heel, I can twist and lift and release that psoas muscle through, well, many different actions. We know that movement's going to hydrate the body more. We know it's going to melt some tissue that's extraneous, that's built up in places it's not needed, and it's limiting our movement. Inhaling very calmly, pelvic floor in your awareness as you come up. Turn back to the front, big circle, hands to your hips. Let's hear some deep breaths from everyone. So really let yourself, come out and breathe, really breathe and move in any way that's helpful. Sometimes it's natural, I think, to move the pelvis just to keep the back softer, but also to feel the pelvic floor area. So it's beyond thinking. It's not something we're doing because we're being told. It's natural. Yoga uses this word sahaja, which means natural or spontaneous. Raise your arms when you're ready from the hip joints, the same thing as before, from the top of the outer thighs. And then we're going to turn the back toes in. Obviously, we're turning the other direction to the way we turned before. Front foot and leg out. We're going to walk the front foot further across the width of the mat. We're going to lift the back heel. We're going to turn it out. Then we're going to bring it down again. We're going up to hip width and no narrower than heel to heel. Keep that tummy toned and the neck soft. Inhale, stretch up. Exhale, bend your front knee and bring your attention to that stretch from the inner groin, actually goes from the top of your inner thigh on the back leg, where those muscles attach. And as it goes across from that inner thigh, across the pelvis, oftentimes we feel a stretch that we can work into through movement. That's what I want us to do, to work into it. Not to hold the breath, to move backwards and forwards, keeping that tummy lightly toned as well. This is the Virabhadra, the good warrior. Bhadra means good. Vira means hero. So the good hero, or the auspicious hero. Keep breathing deep into it. Keep that tummy lightly toned. Inhale. Come on up, well done. Take a big wide circle, hands back to the hips, level up your feet. Take 2 or 3 or 4 deep breaths. And again, you might find you're just letting your pelvis move, any natural movements, so that you feel uninhibited, natural, spontaneous, not having to think too much about it or second guess, just move the way you want to move. When you're ready, walk your feet towards each other. Now, I'm going to recommend blocks or something similar for what we're going to do next. For example, cork blocks or brick blocks like the ones I've got here. Lots of other types of blocks are available. Like sometimes we've got these kind of blocks, which are the same bricks, the same, but different material. Anyway, or whatever you've got that would substitute blocks. They're going to go in front of you like that. You can even do this with just one block if you don't have two. And then we're going to have the feet together. And this is a preparatory for Ekapada Galavasana, which we're not going to do because it's kind of crazy. But we're going to raise up the left foot, just the heel. And then we're going to lift the leg and cross that leg over the other one above the knee. So it's a sort of, it's a little lotusy, it's a little tree posy, but not quite either of those. The legs crossed over. And then you bend your knee, your standing leg knee. And you begin to come down towards your brick blocks or whatever blocks you've got, or even a chair. And you see if you can reach down for those blocks or for that chair or whatever you're using to substitute bricks, blocks, or a chair. Breathing easy, massage it in, meaning move in ways that make things feel more fluid mentally, respiratorily, and physically. Move in ways that make your mind feel more relaxed, your breath feel more expressive, and your body feel like it's getting a little looser. Now, I mentioned this is a sort of preparatory for Ekapada Galavasana, which is a balancing pose for which one would need to have one's hands on the floor even before we started. So for most of us, this is the right place to be, but it's fine also, as long as it doesn't cause any impingement in the knee. I'll just turn around for better visuals. If you feel we want to lower the blocks, or rather if the body agrees to you lowering the blocks and there's no pain in the knee, then that's fine too. But this is really just about the stretch in the iliotibial band and about realizing that things release little by little. So I'm constantly moving the stretch backwards and forwards to sort of work it in, to work it into the hip, like a massage kind of works. They work in some oils to the body. Similarly, you're working the pose into the body. Eventually, just for reference, we're not going to do it, but Ekapada Galavasana, one comes down and the leg crosses over the arms and you lean forwards and come up into the balance. But as I say, we're not going to do that today. We're going to come up very, very calmly. Well done. Obviously, we're going to do the second leg. So take a breath or two. Give yourself a moment in Tadasana. Loosen up in any way that you want to. And when ready, same thing, but with the other leg. So you cross it over. Breathe through your nose. And then coming down at the pace that suits you. So you can just come to your leg. And, you know, the language can be misinformative because I say you can just come to your leg as if it's not enough. You know, enough in yoga is whatever is inviting you to release your breath, your baggage, the mind, tensions in the body. So I would suggest many of us, all of us probably, do actually have enough stretch high up. It's fine to come lower. However, if you want to, lower is not better. It's just lower. Using the bricks or even to the floor, not that it's better to be on the floor. You might just have long arms and short legs. What makes this good yoga is that we're using the stretch, we're working the stretch, we're using it to release what the body's holding, what it was previously holding in the nerves. So we're sort of massaging out tensions, expectations, worries, things we've picked up, pet peeves, etc. So a few more breaths, playing with it, making sure it does not go into the knee joint at all. Lots in the hip, that's fine. Lots along the outer thigh, that's fine. But not into the hip. And maybe even coming to a point where you're sort of close to preparing for Ekapada Galavasana, but we won't come into it, as I said, because we're focusing on the hip stretch, not the balance at the moment. And then we're going to come up, nice and easy, shake out a little bit, move your equipment, and we're going to lay down for a second with another little hip stretch. And I'm sure you know this one, Supta Suchirandrasana. So we're laying on our backs. That's straightforward. If your head tips back, I recommend head support in the form of a block or a blanket. Then we're going to raise one leg and dorsum plantar flex the foot without holding the breath. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The heel turns in, the toes turn out. You cross that leg over the other one. You got it. Then you lift the foot that's on the floor off the floor. You plunge through, you interlace around your far shin or back thigh. And then if you roll around a bit, I'm pretty confident that we will find a host of different opportunities to release, different areas that are a little bit more, reveal a bit more tension or tension in other places. So roll it this way, roll that way. See if you can find something that you really can breathe into. What we want to avoid is daydreaming, right? And we avoid daydreaming by finding sufficiently rich sensations that we can't help but be breathing into them, focusing on them as we roll around. So we sometimes say it's all about the breath. Just breathe into it. All about the breath. Now, when you get into it, you realize, as the Yoga Sutras make clear, that each pose is sort of infinite. You can kind of keep finding more layers of release. So that's called ananta in Sanskrit. It means without end. We're going to release the leg and place both feet on the floor, even though I'm sure we could lay longer. And we're going to take 2 or 3 deep breaths before we do the second side. So let's just savor some deep breaths. Lower back, soft, I hope. Neck relaxed, I hope. Body settling down. When you feel a little bit more settled, then we're going to raise up the other leg and we can move the foot in various ways just to limber the leg up before we move into the position of Supta Suchiransana. So circling, whatever, just bring some life. And when you feel ready, the heel in, the toes out, the leg crosses over the other one. And you lift the foot that's on the floor off the floor, plunge through the gap and interlace around your far shin. And again, this is what yoga teachers say, isn't it? I've noticed yoga teachers invite us a lot to things. They say, I invite you to roll left and right, or whatever they invite you to. It'd be quite nice if they invited us to dinner or something, wouldn't it? But anyway, I invite you to roll around and see if you can find some sensations that are rich enough to challenge a tendency to think about the past or the future. Rich enough to merge with, to disappear into. I sometimes lift my head up as well for bits of, for moments at a time, looking for rich sensations. So obviously, if you do lift the head, that involves the abdominals as well. Sometimes you want to do that for a bit and then release it. Obviously, lifting and then landing are both good for the abdominals because lifting concentrically contracts the muscles and landing eccentrically contracts the muscles as you're moving. Okay, nice and easy. I love that pose. I hope you do too. We're going to release. We're going to place our hands behind the head with the fingers interlaced. So just pop your hands behind your head, interlace your fingers, resting with your hands underneath your head, a bit like you're on a holiday or something. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Let's take some deep breaths because just widening the chest like this is a really nice invitation to let go of some of the tension that's created as we go through our busy days. And of course, if you're busy, there has to be somebody who's doing those tasks. So we become more and more sort of concretized behind this sort of being somebody. And that makes the physical body close up, particularly at the front. So as you let go of your chest, you can feel your shoulder blades too. That whole sort of contracted experience of busyness begins to release. We're going to lift the feet up as well, and we're going to open the angle at the back of the knees to about 90 degrees, and we're going to lift the head up as well. So it's a relatively mild abdominal isometric contraction once we've reached our lifted point, and we hold it for a breath or 3. And from there, we're going to see if we can't just extend one leg and then the other, right? Trying our best, if we can, to keep the lower back, I'm going to say, intimate with the floor, right? The lower back intimate with the floor, and a sense of 4 corners or 4 points imagined onto the abdomen, 2 lower, 2 higher, 2 near the pelvis, 2 near the ribs. And just feel how, if we drew a line between those 4 points, the shape of the rectangle that initially is there is changing as we pull a leg away. The bottom corner on one side gets pulled down, and the opposite corner, lower corner, gets pulled up. So we sort of try and tune in on the changing shape of an imagined rectangle. You imagine it onto your tummy and how it's changing as you move backwards and forwards. A few more breaths like this, if you can. And just one round, we'll take it relatively easy, of one elbow towards the opposite knee. The knee also can move as well as the elbow. And then vice versa, the other way. Well done. Back to center. Head down, feet down. I'd love to know that you're taking a deep breath now, maybe 3 or 4, maybe even some sighs. Being someone, all day long gets more and more tight. We really, really need to let go of that someone. We take the dog for a walk, we have a bath and lock the door, or we come to a yoga class, we have to let go. We're going to release the hands from behind the head, and we're going to roll over to face towards, I won't dictate because I'm not sure where your screen is positioned, but I'm going to face towards you anyway. Now, I mentioned one of the things that the Yoga Sutra by Patanjali emphasizes is focusing on what's called the endlessness. And that's what this name of this pose is. It's called the Anantasana, the endless posture. So when you're ready, having extended your bottom ribs, if you haven't, just do that now, and extended your armpit, you can again do that now. Then we're going to bring the top leg up and just play with it between the horizontal and vertical planes. That's it, you got it. The idea is that as you move backwards and forwards between horizontal and vertical, you can feel the adductor tissue, the inner thigh muscles that originate on the pubic bone, loosening up all the way through to their various attachments along the inner thigh. So it's not, the body isn't a fixed thing. It's something we can change with lots of repetition. We can melt some of the extraneous fascia and we can hydrate the rest. And that's all done through feeling and breath and movement. Eventually, once we feel like we've effectively begun to loosen up our inner thigh, we can bring it to the upright without holding the breath is important. And then we're going to try a little bit more discipline or tapas, because we're going to try our best to get our arm beyond the foot, if possible, or to whatever extent is possible. First of all, one of the obstacles is balance, so you can allow the lower leg to bend if you need to. The second obstacle is the tissue at the top of the thigh that needs to soften. So as you pull your leg backwards and forwards, you can imagine you're massaging and softening that tissue so your leg can get closer. And that's the only way your hand will get anywhere near the foot or even beyond the foot. You can see I've taken my fingers just about, through time and work, just about beyond my foot. I'm not saying you have to, but just work in that direction. And then we're going to take hold of the big toe with the index finger, middle finger, and thumb, making a really solid loop. And then we're going to experiment with extending the leg. Now, it's not important that the leg straightens. It's important that you breathe freely. So it may be that as you straighten the leg, your breath gets tighter. So you might actually rebend it. You might feel, oh yeah, that's better. I'm breathing again. That's what we want as our sort of base level, is that we're breathing freely. So sometimes, as an old friend of mine once composed a song when we were about 18. He wrote a song. It's sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards. So if you're trying to move forwards and you're getting tighter and tighter and your breath is getting more and more shallow, then you're not actually really moving forwards. You're just squashing down resistance instead of releasing it. So be prepared to go backwards, as it were, to rebend the knee, and be prepared to be very honest, which is difficult in our world where we're encouraged to be performative. Very much encouraged, aren't we? To show people, show how clever we are with our certificates, or show how strong we are with our exercise or whatever, but actually it's not about showing, it's about feeling. So I guess that's one of the nice things about doing classes on Zoom is that sort of sense of keeping up with the Joneses. You don't have to worry about it. You're on your own at home. Well, not on your own. We're together, but you know what I mean. So I think the pose lives up to its name, Anantasana, in that you can make subtle adjustments towards complete integration pretty much indefinitely. But we won't do it indefinitely. We're going to bring our leg down when we're ready, because we've got the other one to do as well. So drop your head as well, bring your knees up, push up very calmly from the side, all the way up, and then just swap your feet to the other end of your mat. So you're going to lay on your other side of your feet. So it's straightforward. And once you positioned yourself there, extend your bottom ribs. The way I do that is to press my hand into the floor, my hand that's not supporting the head, and I lift those ribs, stretch them, and then do the same for your armpit. Stretch that towards your elbow. Take a few deep breaths. Just get accustomed to the balance. Jaw soft, eyes soft, breathing deep. And when you feel balanced, then we're going to bring that other leg up just as we did with the first, and we're going to play with it between the horizontal and the vertical planes. And the idea is loosening off. It literally melts extraneous tissue. Just like when you wake up, you kind of melt some tissue by stretching. Because sometimes fascia is like a living thing. It's not static or fixed. Sometimes it builds up too much in some areas because we've been still or immobile. So we need to melt it sometimes so that the whole body can be held together, but fluidly. It's not pulling the body into any biases. So gradually working between horizontal and vertical with this view to yogically release the inner thigh, or holistically release the inner thigh. And then we're going to try our little sort of discipline again. We're going to try to work the leg backwards and forwards so you melt some of the buildup of tissue around the very top of the leg. And that will enable the leg to come a little closer, and maybe you can practice kushanti, yogic patience. Maybe you can be patient and get your fingers perhaps even to your foot without moving your foot much or at all, or even beyond your foot. Obviously, longer arms and shorter legs will help the project. And then you hold your big toe, index finger, middle finger, and thumb, make a very solid loop. Don't hold your breath, though, and start to play with the leg between raising it and bending it, knowing that, we're not performative. There's no one to show anything to, but it's about us. This moment's about you, and about having a bit of time for you. You don't have to do anything for anyone or be anyone's anything. So take your time, breathe through your nose. Feel free to bend again if the breath is a little tight. We don't want tightness in the breath. So there's a really big part of yoga that's just honesty, satya. It's one of the yamas that's mentioned in the Yoga Sutra, but of course the yamas are actually taken from an older tradition, from Jainism. So being honest. So it's a lovely project. Okay, it is a lovely project, and it does feel like you can just keep refining it, like the name says, Ananta. But we're going to bring the leg down, and we're going to bring the knees up, and we're going to come up from the side, ready for Upavishta Konasana. Now, in Upavishta Konasana, it's sometimes useful to use what nowadays called flat blocks. So that's juxtaposed against a brick block, and you might not have a flat block, but you can always use a towel. If you need to sit on a block, flat block, you'll have the corner of the flat block facing forwards, just protruding out between the legs. When we come into our wide stride, upavishta means to sit. And as I say, if you feel collapse, then sit on a flat block, but tilt it and have the corner facing forwards. And that will be very, very useful for a couple of reasons. Number one, it will tilt the pelvis. Number two, it will make a little space between the top of the thighs and the floor, allowing the top of the thighs to drop down. That's useful because, remember, the top of the thighs is the attachment point for the psoas. And so if we can drop that top of the thigh area, then we're going to feel loads of release, a downwards release of the psoas, which conditions an upward release as well. In Upavishta, seated kona, angle, we make sure the angle is the same. So imagine a midline and then the same. The toes both face up. We're going to take our hands cupped like that, if you wouldn't mind. Very good. Thank you very much. And then cupped hands turn back behind you, fingers pointing back behind you. And we're going to roll our shoulder blades down the back and chest up. That's exactly it. Breathe through your chest deeply. Keep your tummy toned while you're lifting your ribs, because that will lengthen your lower back as well. We've got our shoulders down, we've got the chest lifted, we've got the breathing deep, and perhaps we can even feel, as we lift up, a release of the thighs down. So let's take a few breaths in this Upavishta, seated Konasana. Deep breaths, please. Keep those shoulder blades down the back. Keep that tummy lightly toned and that chest really lifted. Good. Now we're going to keep some of that lightness, some of that height as we lift and turn towards our right foot. So you just lift and turn both hands to either side of the leg. So there's a little bit of a twist in preparation for a Pajva Upavishta Konasana. Now, for some people, a little lean forwards can invite more release. So if you want to lean forwards, and if it feels like it invites your breath to release, then that's a good thing. But you only want to lean forwards as much as you can release. So it's worth just leaning a little bit, taking deep breaths, taking your time, not running ahead of yourself. In other words, not moving to a point where your breath gets more and more shallow. So how far one leans forward is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. And again, we're not, there's no performative element. It's quite nice to do a Zoom class because you can just focus on you feeling relaxed, released, no pressure. So some people will come a little way, some people will come a middle way, some people will come close to the leg. It doesn't matter. What matters is the breath, and that's all. Okay, coming back up when you're ready, turning around to face your other leg, not holding the breath, lifting up the chest, breathing through the nose. And again, it may not be necessary, but it might be useful just to lean a little forwards, and that might invite your leg to drop down a little bit at the top. That gives space for your pelvis. So, sometimes it's good to just kind of go in little stages with pauses that you really make an effort to breathe into. So this is why we call our subject yoga or incorporation. Good job. Wherever you came to, that's the right place. We're going to come up nice and easy from there. We're going to attempt to bring our legs back together. If you're on a block, you might want to not be on a block, or you might want to still be on a block if you feel a little collapsed in the back. But this time it's not corner forwards, but just the whole block facing forwards. The pose is sukhasana. The legs are cross-legged. The buttock flesh is drawn out and back, and the palms face up. Sukha is made of two particles, su, good, ka, space, sukha. And then the asana means seat. In some texts after the 11th century, it means posture. So we're going to sit in this good space with the palms facing up and shoulders down, breathing through the nose if you can, waiting for the pose to settle with the breath. Pose just settles with the breath. And once you start to feel settling with the breath, you stay in touch with it as you inhale gently and lift your spine. Exhaling, right hand on the floor behind you, left hand crosses over both legs, and we twist. So it's the Parivrita Sukhasana, the revolved Sukhasana. And again, following the Yoga Sutras and the earlier tradition of Jainism, we make sure that we're following the yama of aparigraha, meaning meaning not, pari, meaning very, graha, meaning grasping or grasping. So as we turn, the Yoga Sutras are very clear that we should not feel grasping. We shouldn't be driven by grasping. A sort of tension, a sort of tightness, a sort of wanting. This is one of the obstacles in yoga called avarati. Avarati, meaning really it's just sort of full of craving. Lifting and turning the other direction when you're ready. Similarly, breathing deeply, keeping the eyes soft and relaxed, and making sure that we're experiencing virati, that is not filled of craving. Rati tends to be associated with sensual craving, so craving physical experiences. And virati means to be separate, to not crave. So to be, in other words, to be content, santosha, to open up to the way things are. Okay, nice and easy. Back to center. We're going to come calmly into our Adho Mukha Svanasana, our downward facing dog. So as soon as you're ready, let's come straight up into it. Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Of course, it's not a name that's ancient. We have an earlier name, which is Gajasana in texts, which means the elephant. So you can think of it like an elephant. And elephants are very sensitive. Their feet are very aware. Hands and feet here. In Adho Mukha Svanasana, we definitely want to make sure our hands are the same distance from the side of the mat as each other.
And there's a huge variety of different ways you can do that. But as long as they're the same distance as each other, it doesn't matter if they're very, very close, very, very wide, or just shoulder width, they should be the same distance from the edge of the mat. Same with the feet. They should be the same distance from the edge of the mat as each other. And then the heels go back as the back of the thighs go forwards. Very subtle, actually. Can't just demand your body does these things. It's got to be gradual. Back of as the heels go back, the back of the thighs go forwards, and the front of the thighs rise up on the support that's coming from the back of the thighs. The back of the thighs go forwards, and the front of the thighs rise up. And then as they rise up right at the very top of the thigh at the front, do you imagine that rising up culminates in a drawing back? It's all connected, drawing back at the very top of the front thigh. And we want waves of energy, wave after wave after wave after wave of energy through the back. Adho Mukha Svanasana. Well done, everyone. Come down to regular kneeling. We call it Vajrasana. And sitting up. One hand on top of the other. That's a mudra. And the mudra is called Dhyana Mudra. And we're just going to sit up. If you've got problems with the knees, put a block between the heels and buttocks. Close your eyes if you want. Breathe through your nose, I would recommend. Roll a little bit on your shins to massage your thigh muscles, your calf muscles, the lower back muscles, and more. We're going to come into a version of Balasana, the version with the knees apart, and the toes are touching but not overlapping. And we're going to come forwards very, very slowly and calmly, so as not to take our bum off our block or our heels. So oftentimes the bum lifts up because we come forwards way too quickly, and the connective tissue doesn't have a chance to soften. So as the chest and torso goes forwards, it pulls the pelvis up. But if we go slowly, then the pelvis can be heavy. And it's also a point, of course, of discipline. And discipline is how we calm these kind of reactiveness that's conditioned into our nervous system and become calmer, which is why we're here, right? So nice to spend time in the balasana. We're going to come up slow and calm. We're going to take our final seated asana of the class before we come to our shavasana. And again, I'm going to suggest sitting on a brick block, but you can sit on a regular block, but with a short end facing forwards, for a pose called siddhasana. Siddhasana has the heels lined up with each other and with the midline of the body. That's one version of Siddhasana. It's always got the heels lined up with each other and with the midline of the body. I've got one foot on the floor behind and one in front. You can put one foot on top of the other, which I'm doing here. We're going to elevate the chest. We're going to breathe through the nose if we can. And we're going to do a yoga practice that we find in the tantric tradition called uccara. And actually we find it in various traditions in late Upanishads as well as Tantras. And we even find it implicated in some early Upanishads too. And this is the practice of pushing a bija mantra up through the central channel. So uchara implying upwardly. Huh? So we have this udkranta, this pushing energy up. So we're going to imagine that when we chant our Om out loud, that it starts at the pelvic floor, and that we can actually feel as we chant it, as we continue the same Om,
then it moves up. And when we get to the bit that is represented by the M of the Om, we should be around the nasal area at that point. And we finally push that energy right up through the crown of the head and beyond. So we're only going to do one of this uccara, but it's very, very effective. The purpose is to center us. So Om, starting at the pelvic floor, moving all the way up. Let's take a deep breath in. Inhale. Oh. And it's also very nice to sort of listen to the afterglow, the sort of the silent part of the Om when you finished the vocal part. And as promised, it's nice to sit, isn't it, after that? But we're going to come down to laying on our backs for the Shavasana, a very important pose in some texts we find. And I'll just quote from one of those texts while you get yourself laid down. So if your head tips back, by the way, put a head support under. Can be a folded blanket, can be a folded towel. Don't take the legs too wide. It's a common mistake and it makes the lower back tight. But do take the arms wide. Make sure your hands are off your yoga mat when you lay for Shavasana. Make sure you're warm enough, obviously. You might want to put a blanket over your tummy or something. And then famously, quite probably the third text that was written on Hatha Yoga, the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra. So we probably, in order, probably goes something like the Amrita Siddhi, the Amrauga, and then the Dattatreya Yoga Shastra. In that text, we have this description of corpse pose. First of all, the text says that this is an excellent practice, a sanketa, for melting yoga, for laya yoga. For melting yoga, it calls it laya yoga. And it describes it like this. Find a place that you can be on your own. You don't have to be anybody's anything. Lay on your back with your mouth facing towards the sky and your limbs loose, as if you were dead. And apart from the fact it's telling us that this is for melting yoga, that's all it says. Lay on your back with your mouth facing the sky, with your limbs loose, as if you were dead. Melting yoga. So that's the ultimate of what we've been practicing. We've been practicing letting go of the sort of tighter and tighter version of self that's connected to all the jobs and goals that, you know, that make us have to have a self. And then we've got to let go of that. We've got to expand again out of this contracted state. And this final pose is all about that full expansion, a total release from any descriptives like male, female, young, or old, someone's mum, daughter, sister, cousin, partner, friend, employer, employee. It's letting go of all the descriptives and being open. Now, obviously, being at home, practicing, you can lay on longer if you have time. But if you want to be on time for the end of the class, now's the time to wiggle the toes and the fingers, or you can do it in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And after having stretched the toes and the fingers, we'll take natural stretches through the body. Just natural. And then when you feel ready, you'll bend your legs and place the feet on the floor. Having done that, we'll roll onto one side for a bit and then the other before coming up from the side. I think it's pretty nice at the end of a class to just do a little thing. So if you wouldn't mind, if you're up for it, putting your hands together in prayer, just very brief. And if you agree with this sentence, say Om. And if you're too shy to say it out loud because there's people in the house, you can say it quietly. But just listen to the sentence, and if you agree, say Om. May any benefit that we've gained in our acting in this way go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. Om. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Delight to see you. Sorry I'm so brightly lit. But I look forward to seeing you again soon. Lots and lots of love. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.